people just joined, but I'm going to get started and start into a couple introductions about myself and then Novonix, and then get into the bulk of my talk today. So just by maybe a show of hands, I'd also encourage everyone to turn on your videos for the chat. Just by a show of hands, anyone that is familiar or has heard of Novonix UHPC before that's in the room. All right. Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to get started. Just before I start, we are a publicly traded company, so that I just have to show this slide to talk about our disclaimers and continue on. All right. So I'm going to give a brief introduction and then talk about UHPC, the hardware, and mostly the theory about why high precision battery testing is really important, why we should care, and then how we can use it, which is really what everyone's interested in, is these actual case studies about what we've done on our pilot line here and how we apply this to our research and our customers' research. So a little bit about Novonix. So Novonix is a company that spans the entire battery space right now in North America. So our anode materials division is leading domestic supplier of battery-grade synthetic graphites. We're currently scaling this up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with offtake agreements with tier 1 manufacturers like Panasonic, PowerCo, and Stellantis. Our cathode group, which is up here in Canada, is commercializing a patented all-dry, zero-waste cathode synthesis technology. And so this is really helping to onshore a domestic supply chain of cathode materials as well into North America, in addition to anode materials. And where I'm focused is our Battery Technology Solutions group, which is also up here in Canada, in Nova Scotia. And what we focus on here is our ultra-high precision coulometry cell testing equipment, as well as R&D services with our prototyping line and test lab of thousands of channels below me here, where we work with folks across the entire industry, helping them prove out their technology, scale their materials on a high quality pilot prototyping line. And our team really works with them to understand their technology. And we're really an R&D partner for a lot of folks across the industry, from tier 1s to startup companies. So I'm going to get into talking about UHPC. For those that aren't familiar, Novonix UHPC is the highest current and voltage accuracy and precision equipment for electrochemical cell testing. And what this means is, we can do everything that a normal piece of cycling equipment can do, but we've designed it to do this with as much current accuracy as possible, and really provide a solution to gaps that other equipment doesn't do so well. So I've mentioned up here on the slide that existing test equipment right now that everyone has in their labs really excels at a lot of cell testing applications, testing cells to end of life, break capability, DCIR, application drive cycle simulation. These are things where you put cells on test and you wait a while to get the results, and really bulk metrics like capacity, fade, or the lifetime. Errors of 0.1% or 1% or so are not so important. But really the gaps are understanding where really small things with big implications happen. Things like when you're trying to develop new materials or do high throughput studies, and you can't really wait months and months or a year to wait for your results. Or people are talking about cell qualification or materials qualification, taking years at this point, something that we're really familiar with. And so looking for ways of doing that much faster in days or weeks instead of months or years. And then things like identifying very small issues with cells before they become big issues. So looking for really small short circuits in cells, self-discharge, for example. And these are things where uncertainty or errors of fractions of a percent really matter long-term. So to talk a little bit more about this, I like to go back to the basics of cell testing and talk about what we're really measuring when we're testing a cell, and then why Coulomb counting to a really fine, precise degree really matters. And I always start with this diagram, and really when we're testing a cell, the only thing we're directly measuring is the potential between those cells and the electrons being moved through the external circuit, through our battery tester. Everything else is kind of inferred. We can't really say every electron is due to a lithium moving across the cell during charge and back during discharge. We can infer that's happening, but these electrons can come from a variety of sources. So when I get into a little bit more of this theory, I'm just going to be showing what's happening during charge, just to make the diagrams a little more simple. So to describe why Coulomb counting is really important, I'm going to talk about different failure mechanisms, different degradation mechanisms that happen, and what that means for the electrons that we're counting through this battery tester. We're all quite familiar with measuring capacity loss. This is where lithium is consumed from SEI growth or active material loss. Even impedance growth can affect our capacity loss. And this can happen with lithium reacting with electrolyte reducing at the anode surface, consuming some of that lithium as we're charging the cell. And then as we discharge the cell, we don't get all that lithium back. So we count fewer electrons on the way back, and we can infer that perhaps we lost some capacity in the cell due to some of these capacity loss-based reactions. So I'm going to build up this definition of coulombic efficiency here a little bit differently than we are used to looking at it, perhaps. The definition of discharge capacity divided by charge capacity is commonly used. I'm going to state it a slightly different way to split up some of the different mechanisms that we can measure with UHPC. So we just mentioned that during charge, we may lose some lithium inventory into some of these different mechanisms. And on discharge, we don't get all of those lithium ions back, so we don't count as many electrons back. So we're going to introduce this fade term here, where our coulombic efficiency is 1 if our cell was perfect every cycle, and then take away this term that's due to these fade-based mechanisms. And now we're going to build this out even further. So what else contributes to electrons being counted through this external circuit when we're testing a cell? And this is where things get a lot more exciting in the diagram. We have a lot more different types of mechanisms that can happen. And so what can contribute electrons? Definitely electron donating reactions, things like electrolyte oxidation, shuttle mechanisms, transition metal dissolution, short circuits or self-discharge within a cell. And all of these things lead to salt depletion, SEI buildup, impedance growth. And these are kind of the silent killers that lead to rollover failure, a lot of the times unexpectedly. So I'll walk through a couple of these and then talk about what that means for our Coulomb counting. So for the top mechanism here, we're looking at manganese dissolution. So especially in cell chemistries like LMFP, manganese dissolution is a really big topic. And when this happens, to create charge balance within the cell, we actually have to count 2 electrons through this external circuit in order to maintain this charge balance. And so as we're charging our cell, removing lithium from the cathode, we're counting those electrons, but we're also causing electrons to do some of these other mechanisms. If there's a short circuit within our cell, we've just basically made an electron shuttle through the cell. As we're charging it, we're just pumping in extra electrons that we're fighting to charge up this cell. If there's a reversible redox reaction here, which I'm showing, there's actually some interesting papers by Michael Metzger and Jeff Dawn's group at Dalhousie talking about the use of PET tape in cells that eventually cause this type of reversible redox mechanism, which basically acts as this self-discharge and just shuttles electrons through the cell. And you're always counting these excess electrons through your cycler. And then even some irreversible mechanisms like electrolyte oxidation here, you're consuming irreversibly electrolyte species, and you're just donating the electrons to your cathode. And in order to create charge balance, you count those electrons too. Now, so this sounds like a lot of extra electrons that we're counting, but all of these mechanisms in a good cell happen very, very small rates. And a lot of the time, it's way below the detection limits of most equipment. The accuracy and precision is not enough to really capture this on a per cycle basis. So that's really the motivation, and how I'll build this out is talking about how to really encounter some of these mechanisms that, as you can see here, don't actually directly contribute to capacity fade at all. There's no lithium disappearing here. These are all excess electrons that we can count, but don't lead to, capacity loss over time, but that will eventually lead to really bad things like our rollover failure. So as we charge the cell, we're counting all these extra electrons. When we discharge the cell, we actually don't count any of these things because they're all self-discharge mechanisms. So we actually miss out on counting them, and they will discharge our cell slightly. So what this means is this is another term that contributes to our coulombic efficiency. Coulombic efficiency doesn't just have to do with capacity loss, it also has to do with added electrons and missed electrons due to self-discharge. So this is the way I like to think about coulombic efficiency, where there's these two mechanism families that we can start to differentiate if we have the ability to do that with our data. And I like to call these slippage-based mechanisms. And I'll talk about why slippage and what we can actually do to measure this when looking at battery data. So you can imagine if you charge up your cell, and if you've got all these extra electrons that you're counting, you may overshoot theoretical capacity of your cell a little bit. And then when you discharge your cell, there's a little bit of self-discharge. So you land a little short of zero on the x-axis. Then as you charge up your cell again, you're going to overshoot your last endpoint because, again, you're counting extra electrons and you started from a non-zero spot on your cumulative capacity curve. And over many, many cycles, your whole voltage curve starts to shift to higher and higher capacity. And so what we can do is put a pin in the map after our first cycle and then track how fast our voltage curve moves across that x-axis. And that's going to be proportional to the rate of these additional reactions happening, these slippage-based mechanisms. And we can make this semi-quantitative analysis of that rate of reactions. And if you have a cycler that's capable of doing accurate and precise enough measurements, this is a really useful new cycle metric. So you can see with some pair cells here, tracking this endpoint with cells with two different chemistries, you've got a vinylene carbonate additive and a vinylene carbonate with propane sultone as an additive. That propane sultone really mitigates the amount of these slippage-based mechanisms happening. And this has been shown in literature to be really reducing the amount of electrolyte oxidation and mechanisms happening at the cathode. And so we're really quickly able, just in a few cycles, to be able to see this difference very clearly, quantify it, and make some decisions based on that. And then showing down here just as a function of the amount of movement per cycle. So you can think about this as the rate of reactions. There's maybe 3 or 4 times the amount of these mechanisms happening without that propane sultone additive. So this is how we turn high precision data into these additional metrics and use them for analysis. What does this mean when we compare to other cyclers? Why, do you need UHPC to do this? We look at coulombic efficiency tested on a number of other research-based good precision cyclers. We can see that the spread in coulombic efficiency of identical tier 1 cells that are tested is orders of magnitude better. So if we take 8 or 9 tier 1 cells and test them and look at the spread of coulombic efficiency, notice the scale here is really blown up. With all of these other research-based cyclers, it's really hard to see the differences between the cells, and especially if you were going to do something like iterate your cell chemistry or change an electrolyte, change a batch of cathode material or a vendor. If you want to make really quick insights in just a few cycles, you're going to need that level of extreme accuracy and precision to do this. How do we do this? it's really just a matter of making very precise and accurate electronics to measure voltage and current. So looking at some of the other cyclers that we were looking at before, some of them have good precision or resolution, but poor accuracy. Some of them have poor resolution, where you can see the bit switching in the resolution. And some of them have poor accuracy and precision. And what this translates to when you integrate all of these data to make your cycling metrics, you're integrating these errors on top of each other and just compounding them. So what that means is then when we look at that previous plot, just in a different way, we have our good precision, nice clean data, but it's not accurate. It's measuring all of these identical cells differently. And then we have, a bit of issue with precision and accuracy, and then a lot of issue with precision and accuracy. With metrics like capacity fade, since this is a cumulative effect and your cell is losing that capacity over time, you can eventually see this trend with any resolution of battery cycler. Even if you cycle to cycle, there's a little bit of up and down. Eventually, you will see that trend of the cell fading over time. But really where UHPC, where this accuracy comes in, is measuring this charge endpoint slippage cycle metric. All of the other cyclers in the battery field have either a slight bias between charge and discharge, so it's always slightly overcounting or always slightly undercounting between charge and discharge. And what that means is this Coulombic efficiency value can never be quite accurate. And this really shows up in our ability to track that endpoint moving across our capacity axis. So some of these cells are walking backwards, some of them are walking forwards in all of these different cyclers. And you can really only track that with our order of magnitude of accuracy and precision. So there's a little bit of the theory, the background of, what does ultra-high precision coulometry mean? What can I do with high accuracy and precision Coulomb counting? And I'll get into now some of the use cases and the actual case studies from our labs, from our research programs. So I'll just highlight a few of the opportunities here. So rapid development cycles. This is really how we utilize this every day. Inter and intra-batch statistics for quality control. If anyone here is in quality control or is familiar with looking for self-discharge in cells, this is an incredible way of looking for very, very small rates of self-discharge. Other things like, I talked a lot about cycle metrics, but the raw data, DQ/DV, DV/DQ analytics are really nice and clear with this resolution of voltage and current. So I'm going to get into a case study of cathode material development now. And really, as a materials developer ourselves, our goal is to not have to wait months to figure out if we've made the next best cathode or the next best coating process for our materials, et cetera. We want to make this decision as quickly as possible. So we can do this with coin cell measurements, with full cell measurements. We have our own prototyping facility, so we can really do this any step along the way. But really that goal is, can we make decisions within a week rather than waiting months? So a really simple example here are two NMC materials that we were testing. And these data here are shown from our pilot prototyping line, where we made 1 amp hour pouch cells with the exact same anode batch, the exact same electrolyte batch, the exact same time everything was assembled. And just the only difference was the two NMC active materials. And you can see here over 8 months of cycling, there was no real warning of anything happening that was different between these cells. They're both fading the exact same way. And then all of a sudden at about 2000 cycles, we have this rollover failure happening. Even when we look at delta V here, which is defined as the average charge minus the average discharge voltage, so it's kind of a proxy for the internal resistance of the cell, there was no change in internal resistance either, no impedance growth happening until this failure happened. So there was really no early warning this was going to happen. This was taken on just a normal lab cycler cycling at 1C. And so the hypothesis here is, can we use UHPC to do, or we can use UHPC to do this? How quickly can we detect whatever's happening here with UHPC? And so I'm showing here, this is also on 1 amp hour pouch cells, just 20 cycles of UHPC done at a slow rate. What we're really trying to do here is measure the electrochemical effects and not the kinetic effects happening. And you can see right away, just within a few cycles, that the coulombic efficiency and very consistently between triplicate cells shown in this plot is a lot lower for this green chemistry that rolled over 8 months into normal cycling. And if we split this out into the capacity fade contribution and the slippage-based contribution, the capacity fade, as we might expect from what we saw earlier, is almost identical. The cells fade at almost exactly the same rate. But this slippage-based term is twice as big in the 622 number 1, and that's the cell that rolled over at about 2,000 cycles. So these slippage-based mechanisms going on in the background that aren't contributing to capacity fade at all are actually what ends up killing this cell over a very long period of time. So this could be something like transition metal dissolution. This could be electrolyte oxidation at the cathode, maybe a less stable cathode surface, or a coating that's not very effective at these conditions. Just cooking our electrolyte or a component of our electrolyte, and then after 8 months or 2,000 cycles, the impedance goes through the roof and our cell rolls over. But we can detect that just within a couple weeks, and even just in those first few cycles within days, using this UHPC cycling technique. So needless to say, this is what we do with every single one of our materials in order to enable really rapid development cycles and say, okay, this isn't working, let's try something new. We can also do this directly with coin cells instead of using cyclometrics to measure this rate of these slippage-based mechanisms. You can do this directly just by using a constant voltage hold and directly measuring the current required to maintain the cell at that voltage. After a while, all your kinetics go away, your cell is fully charged, and the only current that you're measuring is the current that you're fighting due to all those slippage-based mechanisms that I talked about earlier. And so in this case, just within a couple days of a very long constant voltage hold, we can see this ranking for these different materials. We can say, okay, cathode B has a much higher parasitic current occurring, and so likely has the most of these slippage-based mechanisms. And this is raw data right from the cycler. This isn't smoothed or averaged. And our UHPC is accurate and precise to less than 10 nanoamps at this level. So any of this noise that we're seeing here is actually real data. It's not just noise in the cycler system. So when we translate that later on, weeks later, we make full cells in the pilot line. Months later, we're testing the cells. We can see that that very early data measuring that parasitic current, which translates into our slippage-based mechanism, we can see that happen, weeks later when we finally build out the cells, put them on UHPC testing. We can see the slippage in that cathode B is the highest, and then months later, after testing the full cells in traditional cycling, those cathode B cells fail first, followed by A, followed by C, which is exactly what we saw just within days of making that material and sticking them in coin cells in the lab. So it's a really powerful technique to really not have to wait for all of this information, which could be very valuable in terms of speeding up qualification of materials. I think the agenda was running a little late, so I'm going to jump into maybe a case study for quality, because I know there was a lot of talk about quality control today. And it kind of plays on some of that constant voltage hold that I was just talking about, these self-discharge mechanisms, trying to measure that to a really precise level. And so there is a really big need in industry as well as development and process development for manufacturing within North America to speed up quality control. This is a huge issue because millions of cells can be stored at any time as QC processes, especially for electric vehicles, can take weeks to do as you wait for the cell to discharge enough to be able to make a very confident decision on the quality of that cell. So our proof of concept study here is, can UHPC prove or speed up that process and do this within an order of magnitude shorter? And of course, every cell can't be connected to a high cost, ultra high precision channel. So this is more of an application to see if this is something that can be done as like an intra batch statistical kind of approach to detect some issue that's happening in manufacturing early, so that those cells don't sit on a shelf, those hundreds of thousands or millions of cells sit on a shelf for weeks. So one of the customers we worked with stated to us that an ideal self-discharge rate in QC was about C over 100,000. If they could measure that with these big prismatic cells very accurately and precisely, they would be very happy in order to figure out how to rank cells very quickly. So using this constant voltage hold technique, if all the kinetics go away and you can just measure directly the amount of parasitic current affecting the cell, and that self-discharge rate, whether it's just electrochemical or maybe there's something more physical happening within the cell and causing a small amount of self-discharge. And so using UHPC with pair cells at a couple different conditions, because in mass manufacturing, you may not be able to control the very consistently control the temperature of these massive facilities for QC. So this was the temperature range that we were given by industry. And you can see that pretty quickly, around 60 hours or so, we can measure very consistently between the cells that we tested. You can see the kind of shadow max and min values there of the pair cells, that these cells were all under their C over 100 level. And then again, the UHPC is current, precise, and accurate to tens of nanoamps. So all of these data are real and trustworthy for this application. And a note here that even though this level of 1 milliamp may not seem super impressive, it's important to remember these are 120 amp hour cells. They're quite big, and the DQDV of a cell here is 1 to 200 milliamp hours per 100 microvolts. So if there's a very tiny fluctuation in the cell's voltage or the channel's ability to maintain that voltage, you'll see a huge current response in response to that. So voltage precision accuracy is just as important in these applications. So even though this seems like a fairly large current value, these cells are huge. This is C over 120,000. And if this wasn't done on a system with this type of accuracy and precision, this noise would be massive, many times this magnitude. So we can do this quite confidently with UHPC. And just to say, can we do this even faster? Say, we've shaved off days of QC, can we shave off even more? So even looking at how early into this voltage hold process can we go? Here I've shown just up to about 16 hours or so where our kinetics between the two temperatures kind of cross over and start leveling out. And again, very, very consistently with a lot of confidence, we can say that these cells, maybe we can track this trajectory or make a correlation to that steady state current, especially in a manufacturing line where everything is so consistent every time, and have some kind of confidence interval and a tolerance to hit before just 16 hours or so. So within a day of a production cycle after formation, being able to use inter and intra-batch statistics to say that there is a problem with a certain set of cells to a really fine tolerance. So one other case study I want to go over, which is a pretty hot topic, especially as the panel talking about machine learning and AI in the battery space, is lifetime prediction. We have this new layer of battery data, this new dimension of precision that we can lean into. And we've been talking a lot about these slippage-based mechanisms making cells fail. So what I've always been interested in is applying UHPC to machine learning and lifetime prediction. So my hypothesis here is the ability to measure these metrics and probe degradation with UHPC will be able to enable machine learning lifetime prediction to a whole new level. So we partnered up with Sandbox AQ, a spin-out out of Google, and really leaned on them for their machine learning expertise. And we provided a lot of data and our electrochemistry expertise. And we created this test matrix where we had some cells that were actually testing on low resolution cycling equipment for a couple of years before this project. And these cells were all high nickel chemistry, but they varied in anodes from having graphite in the anodes, having silicon graphite in the anode. So there's going to be a few different failure mechanisms. And to make it even more challenging to predict the lifetime of these cells, we did this at a few different temperatures, 25, 40, and 60. And we did this between different SOC ranges, so really challenging a generalizable model so that we're actually like cutting out some of the failure mechanisms due to, say, the cathode here, where we're stopping the cell at 4.06 volts, not going into that last lattice contraction and kind of the high reactivity level of the cathode, the full SOC range, and then this last SOC range where we cut out some of the silicon capacity, only discharging to 3.3 volts. So combining that with the different temperatures, the different SOCs, this makes the cells fail very differently. So you can see some cells failing at only a few hundred cycles, whereas other cells in just different conditions of the same cell last for thousands. So with standard modeling features, such as the residual voltage curve features from cycle 1 to 100, cycle 1 to 100 discharge capacity trends. So these are common features used in the literature, such as the Severson lifetime prediction paper. Especially with turning on and off all these different failure mechanisms, it gets very difficult to use these low resolution voltage curve features and degradation trajectories to predict the lifetime. And these typical models don't really work very well. What we did is we took these tests, we took those same features and layered in our UHPC metrics as additional features to train the models on. So these would be our coulombic efficiency, our capacity fade, our charge endpoint capacity slippage. So what we're now doing is we're taking some of the more kinetic-based implications of our testing and combining it with that really detailed electrochemical information about some of those rates of invisible reactions that you can't see with capacity fade data, and layering that in. And with all of those features layered in, the models perform much, much better. This can be cross-validated, removing one of the cell models and then predicting on the other two, or removing one of them and then predicting for that cell model. And so this is really, really exciting and promising work for machine learning for battery lifetime prediction. Layering this in with the quality control and also some of the materials development work, these things can really be applied all through the battery development life cycle and the whole battery supply chain. So I just want to conclude by revisiting a slide to say that UHPC is really focused on the gaps. It can do anything a normal cycler can do, but you may not necessarily want to do 1C cycling for 1,000 cycles on a channel when you can do that on another system and really use high precision battery testing to dive deep into your electrochemical system, get some information really quickly, And a lot of the time what we do is use it to avoid putting cells on test, to not test every iteration of every technology. And that really helps speed up the development cycle, reduce the number of channels that we need to have in the lab and floor space, and especially save money and increase focus, which is definitely something the battery industry is a big theme of the battery industry this year is extreme focus on what matters. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. You can contact us to learn more and open the floor for questions now and general discussion.
Right. Hi. So, as a test engineer, well, I changed industries right now, but I'm still in it. Um, um, yeah. So, how do you? I guess you are doing with higher precision ADCs and higher precision um, current, shunts, whatever you're using. Um, my question is, okay, so you said you have dedicated for high precision, and then you have normal, standard cyclers, right?
Yeah.
So are you using using that data, let's just say you have some predictive information that you can apply now to your cyclers, the regular cyclers for long-term cycling, kinetic, should I say, as you mentioned it, as you were called it. Are you using that information from your precision equipment now implement a different cycle profile on your kinetic cyclers?
Yeah, so is the question, are we using it to influence how we test cells on the lower precision cyclers?
Correct.
Yeah. Not necessarily. We haven't done any real work in that vein. Most of the use cases that I mean, this machine learning based work has really just helped to prove that the more, I'd say, semi-quantitative or qualitative work that we do, like where I started in the presentation, talking about saying, hey, look, slippage is higher in this cell, whereas fade is the same, and that's making the coulombic efficiency different. It's really giving a lot of validation to using that very quick, semi-quantitative analysis to say just within a matter of days, hey, our slippage is higher. Let's maybe not even bother to put those cells on test to prove them out over many months. To more of say, let's go back to the drawing board, make a new material, rather than test a material out, design say a threshold of this slippage mechanism metric for our development that we need to hit before we decide, okay, that's a winner, let's put that on test.
But from what you showed so far, to me it looks like the slippage is the actual indicator rather than fade, the early indicator. What's going to happen? It seems because it's shifting, right? You see that shift. So it
Mhm.
seemed like the slip is the main indicator what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'd say it would depend on the chemistry. In a lot of what I'm showing here, slippage is really dominating. You'll notice a lot of what I had in this presentation was focused on NMC-based chemistries. In a more stable system like LFP, uh, the failure in the CE is typically dominated by capacity fade, unless you're going at higher temperatures, and in which case you might have iron dissolution happening and driving some of those more slippage-based failure mechanisms. So
Mm.
really being able to split that coulombic efficiency up into both and really analyze what's happening to both, I think is really what gives that even like the black box approach of machine learning a little bit more power to say, that now there's this other dimension of the data that I can look into rather than just looking at capacity fade, you get this extra thing to say, hey, in this instance, when slippage is high, this is going to be a really important feature, or this is going to be a really important metric. But when it's low, it might be overpowered by the capacity fade.
Yeah, but it seems like for capacity fade, then you need a higher longer cycles. I mean, not longer cycle, longer time to get to it, to actually detect it.
Yeah, I didn't have it in here, I don't think. With I have an identical study with anode materials rather than cathode materials that I didn't have in this presentation, where it shows the exact opposite thing happening, where because we use the same cathode and the same electrolyte, the slippage is almost identical between all of the samples, and the fade is quite different. And so depending on what you're changing in your system and what the dominating failure mechanism will be for that material or that electrochemical system, that's where you would see maybe the fade appear right away, and you could say, hey, look, I know what mechanism is contributing to my system more.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Any other questions?
Hey, Stephen. Wait for another question.
Yeah, Suraj, I can't quite hear you. I can just hear you, but you're very, very quiet.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember me, but I think I talked to you maybe like 5 years ago when I was at Compass Minerals. But anyway, I'm working on early stage kind of battery testing, working on cathode materials, but we are doing battery testing, of course. So what is the coin cell a good way to quickly, like you mentioned, the 1 week turnaround, that's the faster turnaround is the goal. Is a coin cell sufficient, or do you think the pilot line is required in some cases that you've seen?
Yeah, I'd say I'll give the disappointing answer of it depends. Of course, like with coin cells, especially, the reason why we really like that CV method is because cycling in coin cells can be interesting to try to deconvolute things that are happening if you don't have good alignment within your coin cell. That can affect things. You're trying to battle things happening on the lithium side all the time too. So that CV method, there is still that contribution of lithium that we need to be aware of. But it's a really nice way of just isolating that one active material and measuring what is the electrochemical stability within the confines of this coin cell of that material that I can measure. So you can do the same thing with graphite lithium coin cells, where you just do a constant voltage hold, say at 5 millivolts. So you completely lithiate the graphite and then wait until all the kinetics kind of slow down. You equilibrate the lithium gradients within your graphite, and then you're just measuring that rate of reactions onto the surface of the graphite. And you can rank your materials that way. What it doesn't capture necessarily is some of these crosstalk based mechanisms, where something that happens at the cathode in one system may be reactive at the anode. So you don't necessarily get those contributions. So when you're really looking at how is my system going to perform, you still need to do that full cell based validation. But especially when trying to iterate really quickly, you may not even have the ability to make, say, kilos of material required to run a full cell run to make amp hour stack cells. So even that quick ability to work with a small amount of material and get really deep insights out of it can be really valuable depending on what state you're in. And then Amal had a question in the chat, and they're still here. So it is C1 minus D1, the charge endpoint slippage, and D1, C2, the discharge slippage. So the charge endpoint slippage is going to be capacity between consecutive endpoints. So yeah, there is a way of kind of breaking it all down into the capacities of each cycle, adding one, subtracting the next. Yeah, so I could whiteboard it out quickly, but I think you're on the right track there. There's a great paper in 2010 by Jeff Don and Chris Burns and Aaron Smith that kind of go through all the derivations of all the endpoint slippages and coulombic efficiency and how all those different components add up. All right, any other questions? All right, well, if there's no other questions, then thank you all for attending the session. Oh, sorry, there's another question there.
Yes, sorry.
No worries.
I was trying to get it written very quickly now, but basically I'm curious whether this instrumentation is something that will be typically bought by research institutes that have limited budgets, or if the level of the investment is more in par with the larger companies.
Yeah,
if you
so
compare with normal cycler.
Yeah, what I can say is we have customers all over the world in every level of academia to, tier 1 companies to startup companies. And so it is a more expensive piece of equipment than traditional cyclers. That level of accuracy and precision, the amount of the components that need to go into it, even just like the pre-work into calibration and burning in of all of the circuits and components before shipping. There's a lot more that kind of has to go into the machinery. So it is a more expensive piece of equipment by many times the cost of another cycler brand. But then in terms of the level of investment or return, as you can probably see with a lot of the case studies here, the degree of return can be massive on something like this, depending on how it's used. So instead of waiting months and months to be able to have information in days with a high degree of confidence, which is definitely the key, is in some cases invaluable when it's crunch time or when the industry is in the state that we're in now, where everyone really needs to have really high confidence in their data and make decisions and good decisions quickly.
Yes, well, I will get some estimate, then contacting your sales in that case. Because you are selling this as a product, if I understand right. Yes.
Yeah, full turnkey integrated system, rack mountable. Yeah, we try to be as flexible as possible with it.
Did I understand well? And this is for coin cells only?
No, coin cells, full cells. So our units go up to 20 amps. And yeah, so each of the systems, there's more information on our site, but have multiple ranges within each system. So, from up to 20 amps, you can have ppm level precision and accuracy, all the way down to nanoamps on all of our equipment.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very instructive talk.
Thank you.
Have a good day, and I'll have a good evening because I'm in Sweden.
All right, thank you. All right, yeah, and if there's nothing else, then thank you all again for attending, and hope to see you all at other Volta events.